Hello and welcome to the Slackware ARM vlog, and this is season 3, episode 10. I'm Stuart Winter, the platform architect of Slackware Linux on the ARM port. And hello Brent, we've got Brent Earl, who's one of the contributors to the ARM port of Slackware. Hi Brent.
Hello.
How are you doing? You good?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Yeah, all good. All good. There's quite a bit to talk about in this episode, but I thought again, we could sort of just briefly summarize Slackware again, because we haven't really done that. We started making a stab at it in the last episode, and there's a whole episode of, I think, the first episode of season 2, which you can find on the playlist on the YouTube channel. That covers the sort of background of Slackware. But essentially, this channel is about covering the development of the ARM port of Slackware Linux. So it's developing the Slackware Linux project on the ARM architecture, which you'll hear us talking about it in this podcast. It's called, what we're developing on now is the 64-bit ARM platform or ARM architecture, and it's called AArch64. But this project's been around for quite some time prior to that. So what is Slackware? Slackware is one of the oldest open source projects in the world. It's about, 30 years old now, I think. And it's one of the oldest open source projects in the world, and it's one of the oldest actively developed and maintained Linux distributions, so open source Linux distributions in the world as well. And one of the key differences between Slackware and all of the others is that whereas the other distributions sort of went more of the touchy-feely, help the user do everything kind of route, the Slackware distribution has stayed pretty much in line with how it always was, which is provide a modern user land. So we need all of the latest applications, the latest software, and all of that kind of stuff that we call the user land. It has a modern set of applications for user land, and likewise it has an up-to-date or modern Linux kernel. So it has all of the modern stuff. The only thing, the key difference is the way that you interact with the operating system, and the way that you need to put a little bit more effort into it to understand and to manage how the system works. And what that allows you to do, whilst it's a bit more initial upfront investment to do that, it allows you, essentially Slackware doesn't get in your way. So if once you know how Unix works, and if you're comfortable with the Unix shell, for example, and finding your way around Unix systems, and I'm talking about Unix, not just Linux boxes, you'll be able to easily use Slackware. And you'll find that when you set things up, Slackware doesn't come along and change them without you finding until it's too late. So Slackware basically gives you a platform to build what you want on it without all of the guardrails and safety rails, which tend to, for me personally, as quite a long time user, get on my nerves. If I log into a system, it says, "Oh, are you sure you want to do that?" I'm like, yes, that's why I did it. It takes away all these kinds of little irritating things, which for expert users, really quite annoying. Takes away all of that and just gives you an open platform to do what you want with very few guardrails. But it still has the ability to install packages, manage updates, upgrades, and that kind of thing as well that you really do need for an operating system. And so it provides, and so really it's kind of like a really nice sort of oldish Unix type system, but within a open source Linux ecosystem, if that kind of makes any sense. And so that's what Slackware is, and that's been developed since the early 90s. And then Slackware, I started the ARM port in 2004, so it's about 19 years ago, something like that. So I've been doing the ARM port now for about 18 or 19 years, and this channel is really about the future development of that. And it seems that people are interested in kind of how do you develop a distribution, and that's what it is. Okay, so that's kind of like a little summary of that. As I said, I've got myself working on the ARM port and Brent as well. And then in the Slackware team, there's a group of, in the core Slackware team for the x86 project, there's a small group of international volunteers, including myself and Brent, that help with that project as well. All right, so we've got a few different things to cover in this episode. And one of the things we're going to start with is, in fact, actually, Brent, what we'll do is I'm going to start because we've been saying on over the last like 3 or 4 episodes that we'll talk about the HoneyCombe work, rather the work Brent's been doing to onboard the what's the name of it again? The HoneyCombe
LX2.
LX2. Okay, so Brent's been working on that, and I'm really interested in that as well because I want one of these machines because they're more powerful. They've got more RAM and more network ports and more of everything, and I want more of everything, including speed and memory. So I'm really keen to look at that. But what we'll do is, in order to get there, well, let's just move this thing out of the way. There we go. So what I'm going to do is just quickly show you the roadmap. So actually, if you're interested in seeing this for yourself, the easiest way, I need to give this VM some more memory. It's struggling a bit. Where are we? Okay, so you go to arm.slackware.com, which is the Slackware ARM website, and then there we go. And then under development, you've got roadmap. That's how you can find the roadmap. Okay, so it's nice. It's pretty lightweight roadmap. So there's a few different parts to it. So first of all, Slackware ARM 32-bit is no longer maintained for a few reasons, essentially because it's old technology and you can't do things like use a USB 3 Ethernet dongle, so you can't have use the full fiber to your house, for example. You can't get the full speed that you want using the sort of regular hardware that was supported. So that was one of the good reasons to drop that. So all of the future development is on 64-bit or Slackware ARM64 as it's called. So there's a few different things on this roadmap. The first one is the HoneyCombe LX2 that we just mentioned, and we'll look at that a bit on that today. I'm going to complete at some point. Oh well, you can see I've already slipped this date. Look, that didn't get done. It will do at some point though. But in order for other people to figure out how to get Slackware onto other hardware models that we don't yet support, I'm going to write I'll finish writing the direct integration guide at some point. We've got the video support for the Raspberry Pi 4, which is called VC4, and that's already in the mainline kernel. Actually, it's just that we're not using it yet. Hopefully, it works in Linux 6.1 when we migrate to that in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, it should be good.
Hopefully,
They put a lot of work into it, so I hope it works. But you know,
we'll see. Yeah, that was what it was supposed to work in 5.19 as well, right? So
yeah.
Didn't work so much. So then the next thing was the all-in-one installers, which I covered in the previous episode. What I'm going to do with those is I'm going to migrate. In fact, I'm going to drop the existing installers, you know, the 300, 400 meg installers, because it just doesn't make any sense to supply duplicates, essentially. Well, they're not duplicates because, well, they are. The only difference is that one of them has the all-in-one has, you know, 4 gigs of all of the Slackware packages included, and the other doesn't. But it doesn't make any sense to me to supply both images, really. You know, if you want an installer, download the installer image, and that's it. And plus, the fact is, there was a good reason why I was going to continue supplying both, but not update the all-in-one so frequently, or rather not update it every time I upgrade the kernel because it's massive. But I can't. Yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to keep the all-in-one. So basically, if you don't know what the all-in-one installer is, the all-in-one installer is you download a single image, DD it, you know, you dump it onto your SD card, boot it, and that is the Slackware installer, and it will find the packages which are included in that image and install them. So you don't need to go and, you know, you don't need to tell it to go and install off a CD or install off HTTP. It just finds them on the image that you DD to the SD card and installs from there. So it's just easier from a user point of view. But I was just concerned about I don't want to publish those every time I upgrade the kernel because they're like, you know, it's uploading like 20 gigs of, no, it's not, it's about 15 gigs or something, 20 gigs, I don't know, 10, I don't know. Anyway, it's uploading quite a bit of data. And I thought, with the existing way that we're doing it, is the images are only a few hundred megs to download because they only include the installer. It doesn't include the actual packages that you're going to install. And then I thought, one of the concerns I had is if you install off an all-in-one installer, let's say for example, if you booted an all-in-one installer that was on Linux 5.19, that's a kernel that was included with the installer, but you actually installed a newer version of the kernel package to your OS, it means that you won't be able to do the operating system initial RAM disk synchronization at the end of the installation process, which is where the installer cheroots inside of the OS and then says to the management tool, hey, go and find out all of the figure out which firmware is required for this particular piece of hardware, and then stuff it all in the operating system initial RAM disk, grab some kernel modules, stick them in there as well, pack it all back up again, say, hey, here's your new OS boot image, or rather the operating system, the OS init RD. So it does that, but it can't do that if if the kernel package you're installing is not the same as the booted kernel, because it just doesn't. I'm not going to get into that, but it doesn't work. But the good thing is, though, is that because the way I've designed it, it doesn't actually matter. So all it'll do is it'll see that it doesn't work and just bypass it in the installer. You won't even notice that it's not going to do it. And when it boots, it'll just boot. The only thing that won't really work is it won't have particular firmware baked into the kernel. But so like for example, if you plugged in so let's say you had a USB network dongle and you had that connected in the installer. When you boot the installer, usually at the end of it, it'll tell you it's resynchronizing the OS init ID. It takes about 3 minutes. And what it's going to do is if it finds that it has firmware for your USB dongle, it will copy it into the operating system initial RAM disk, so that when you boot into the OS, once you finish the installation, once you boot into the OS, if the firmware is required at boot time to light up something on your device, it will get lit up immediately within the sort of first stage of boot. I don't know if that makes any sense, but basically that's what it does. The thing is, though, is that generally it's not actually going to cause a problem for most cases, because all of the supported hardware models, we ship all of the required firmware in the OS init RD anyway. So like for all the Raspberry Pi 4 has got stuff it needs, so has the Rock Pro 64, we bake it in from the outset because it's supported. So it shouldn't actually be a problem if people install a different version of the kernel package, because I actually did try it and it was fine. So I was worried about that, and then I tested it and realized it was perfectly fine, and that was good. That was a long description. So basically we're going to be dumping out the small installers and replacing them with 4 gig compressed images at your DD, and everything is easier. And then once that's done, I'm going to upstream that once we've tested that out. And that's had a bit of road testing by the community, or by the ARM community. I'll upstream that all-in-one stuff for x86 as well, because I think that's going to be quite useful for x86 going forwards. If anyone wants to, well, depends what Patrick wants to do with it. But not most of the x86s don't have optical media anymore. I mean, I don't see any that you in a store that has a CD drive or a DD, certainly not a CD drive, but even DVD drives or Blu-ray, like most of them don't anymore. At least
no, they don't. So usually.
Yeah, so to me, it just makes more sense to have an all-in-one installer for the x86 64 as well. But that's not my choice. It's not my decision, but I think that's a good idea. Or at least make it available as well as, because then you can just DD it to a USB stick, a USB thumb drive, and boot it on your x86. So anyway, once we've got that embedded into the ARM port, I'll look at that for the x86 as well and upstream all that stuff. There's been a few things that we've completed recently, apart from the fact of releasing the operating system. That was quite a big one, which was this year, wasn't it? I think it was. I'm sure I can't remember. Yeah. I need to check when that was, but yeah. In addition to actually releasing the 64-bit port of Slackware ARM, I have done. What else did I? What is this? Oh yeah, this was the. So yeah, this is complete. So basically, there's at the moment the way Slackware ARM works. Well, it's always going to work this way. Is that we supply what we call a generic initial RAM disk, and it's basically about 350 megs RAM disk image that you get that gets loaded into RAM, and from which the system brings up it stands up the actual environment. So the Linux kernel is booted. It loads a whole load of kernel modules, software drivers for hardware and stuff like that, and user space and stuff. Loads all of that up, and that finds your storage and everything, and then it pivot routes into the OS proper, and that's when Slackware is really started. But the way that we do it in Slackware ARM is that we provide you with really quite a large generic initial RAM disk. It's got like loads of stuff in there that you'll never need. Like it's got tons of kernel modules that you probably will never need on your machine, but it has to support all of the huge array of ARM devices on the market. And it should actually work for x86 as well, but I haven't actually tested that. But that's not how it works in x86. That's completely, in fact, in x86 it's flipped. It's completely inverted the way it's done. But we had to do it in ARM. We didn't have to do it the way I've done it, but it makes the most sense. And I've done it the other way around. It wasn't a good idea. It doesn't work well in ARM. ARM is not the same as x86. So in ARM, we give you this big generic initial RAM disk. You have loads of stuff in there that you don't need. Predominantly that's kernel modules. So this feature here, it says basically it does what the x86 MKinitRD tool does, or MK RAM make Gen RAM disk or whatever it's called, which is okay, which modules do you actually have loaded on your system? It's those ones. Great, I'll package all those up and stick those in the kernel in the initial RAM disk, and then that's what that does is it reduces the size of your initial RAM disk significantly, like quite a lot, probably. And actually, I don't know what it reduces it by, but it's probably about 60%, I guess. And then also that means basically the only reason to do that is because it loads faster, simply because the initial RAM disk file is significant. It's like hundreds of megs smaller. It's probably about 70 megs versus 350. So it just simply loads faster because there's less data to load off the storage. So that's why we do that. So that got completed earlier this year. What is this about? Oh yeah, that's a tutorial doc. That's to do with, yeah, that's the same thing. Oh, this other one. So in a previous episode, I talked about adding in an initial stage in the pre-boot shell. So I've already written that code and I've tested it. So now you can. I might show you that today actually if we get time in this in this vlog, this episode. There's a few other things here as well which you've been looking at. I won't go through all of these at the moment. Oh, this one here, kernel. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I don't think. I don't want to talk about that at the moment. Maybe in the future, if we run out of things to do, I might look at that. But this switching, definitely switching the OS initRD manager tool to use LZMA instead of gzip on the initRD. It just doesn't make any sense at all. Because I was thinking about this, because it increases, whilst it reduces the size of the operating system initial RAM disk by about 10 megabytes. It takes about 4 minutes to do, or maybe, yeah, it takes about 4 minutes to pack it compared to 1 minute with gzip. But the thing is that for the 10 megabytes of space it spares, or 10 megabytes reduction, because basically when the bootloader loads in the OS initRD into RAM, all it's really doing is just loading some blob off some storage into RAM. So basically making it 10 megabytes smaller, it just means there's less data to load. But the thing is that the transfer rate of the storage is what, about 40 megabits a second or something like that. Oh, hang on, no, 400. I think must be. Yeah, it must be about 400 megs a second or something like that. I don't know. But something like that. But basically what I'm saying is that the amount of time it takes to compress, it literally takes just like that to load an extra 10 meg. Like by the time I've snapped my fingers, the 10 megs have loaded. So it doesn't make any sense to spend 4 minutes compressing it. So I've thought that through enough, and I'm never going to do that. I might add it as an option, but not unless someone really thinks really wants me to. I'm not going to do that. Doesn't even make sense. And then the next one is the other one that you might want to talk about today, Brent, which is supporting the Pine phone, Pine 64 Pine phone.
Yeah,
we've got that there.
That's going to need a lot of work. But
all right, so this is the stuff here that you pointed me to for the Pine for the HoneyCombe. So I haven't looked at any of this, I must confess. I just went into the directory, told me. So at the moment, the way the state of the HoneyComb integration, I think, is pretty much that the OS init ID is done, and we've got the kernel modules, apart from maybe a couple that will be in the 6.1 Linux 6.1 build. We've got all the kernel module stuff done. The OS init ID, I think, is done. So is it a case now of any?
It's just deciding how to like to make images for people to burn, and then use U-boot or the UEFI firmware from the vendor.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty much just that, deciding what to do.
Okay.
I'd like to have U-boot working, but it's just so complicated the way that they set it up, like to build it.
Okay.
Lots of firmware, and you have to write like 6 or 7 things to the SD card first, and then all you have is a working U-boot environment. But I did get ARM trusted firmware finally to compile for HoneyComb. I think that probably the build scripts on there are not the same as what I had now, but
okay.
yeah.
So, all right. So it sounds like then U-boot's off the table then.
Yeah, it's just like too much. It
Okay.
makes it too complicated. I don't really want to maintain that.
Okay. So, okay. And then with Grub, we've got I added the Grub package to Slackware ARM or AR64 a while ago, didn't I? So all of that should be
Yeah.
good. Okay. All right then. Well, that's fine, because that way we've got an additional reference integration using Grub, because not every, quite clearly, not every board or hardware model uses Grub. They have that's usually Grub. Oh, sorry, not every hardware model uses U-boot. There are other bootloaders available or required, I should say.
Yeah.
All right. So okay. So what, in terms of being able to, let's say that I want to pick this up, I want to ask Solid Run to kindly send the project a HoneyComb LX2, and I get what am I going to
I don't
need?
know if they'll do that, but they may. I mean, I didn't ask yet, so
I will. I will. No, okay, but what do I need to do? I mean, because so in terms of the installer, is that where am I going to start with that? Is that
everything works except for the bootloader after the installer's finished. So if you build a USB stick with the installer on it with those build scripts, it should it'll boot using the UEFI firmware from SolidRun, and then after that you just have to install Grub at the end of the installation. So
okay.
everything, it's pretty close to done. But of course, I'm not building the firmware. I'm just using what they have on their site. So
Okay. So where's the installer building stuff then? Is it in the directory called installer? Or was it elsewhere?
it's right in that directory in HoneyComb build scripts. Yeah. And yes, that's changed a little bit, but mainly the USB image.build is what you want to look at.
Where's that?
HoneyComb UEFI boot USB image.build.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And I did have some scripts in there, the SD cards that build. I integrated it, but some things need to change again. So, because I think I did all that like in October or something. So it's very much just like a stripped down version of the build scripts to show like a, proof of concept type of thing and make it easier for editing while we're testing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Right.
Yeah. I think all I changed was, you see where it labels a extension for file system slack UEFI boot. I took out the UEFI part and just made it slack boot. and so then the grub picks it up by the label of the file system.
Okay.
Yeah, which is basically what U-boot does for the other hardware models. It looks for the label of the disk.
Hmm.
Yeah. Installs grub onto the thumb drive and.
Okay.
Yep.
Need to
I'm
think.
sure it can be dumbed down even more, but it's really not a very complicated thing with if you use their firmware that comes with the machine. So.
Oh, okay. So this is right. Where is this? You said you haven't got the HoneyComb booted at the moment, have you?
Oh, I do. It's running, but I don't have a working thumb drive because I broke it trying to upgrade the kernel. Which would be fixed if we had the all-in-one installer anyway, but
Coming.
yeah.
Once I've released Linux 6.1 and got that out, then I'll migrate over to the AIO images. I need to. It's one of those things where I need to sort of update all the documentation at the same time as pushing everything out and change a bunch of scripts to yeah. But on this though, so is this part here? Is it going to be similar to the way the Raspberry Pi is organized, where there's a different mount point for the Raspberry Pi fat partition?
Well, so the only problem that I really have now is after the installer runs, I think I was copying over what was on the thumb drive to the boot partition on the solid state drive, internal drive. I can't remember though. I haven't done an install in quite a while. Let's see.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't done an install since like end of October. So it probably doesn't even need that anymore. I think the installer just puts things where you tell it when you set up the partitions. So.
Well, I'm thinking, yeah, but when the HoneyComb LX2 boots, is it the case that you've got one partition that only has the HoneyComb firmware and all that stuff on it?
Yeah, Slack EFI just has grub
Okay.
firmware to boot the bootloader.
Okay.
And the rest is all sitting on that partition right there that you've highlighted. So, and it was mostly to say in line with what Pat does with his README for UEFI. I was just trying to make it simpler, and you could probably put it all in the same partition, but that's what I did. So
No. So basically, boot file. This what you mean here is that this would be the /boot part directory. Ah, okay.
The one above it is /boot/EFI. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the grub config that's in that same directory, it looks for the label of the disk when it boots. So it looks for those two labels.
Did you change the installer to do that then? What have you changed?
No, I just have. What I do is I manually install grub at the end of the installer. So
how does grub? Okay. How does grub know to look for these though? These labels.
It searches for the disk label in the boot menu.
Ah. Oh, okay. And in the boot menu, you've got these defined.
Yes. Yeah.
Ah.
So, and the only thing I've changed for those is instead of Slack EFI boot, it's just Slack boot. So that's why I think that's the only change in there that was made that would actually prevent it from working. So.
Okay. I need to change the other code though, because the one of the ARM scripts in the installer looks for SLK boot, I think, doesn't it? And then it does. Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah, it can be changed. I just tried to make it obvious what was happening.
Yeah. Okay.
But it works. I've installed with it several times now. It's just a matter of getting grub to work after the installer runs. So.
Yeah, it's this one.
Mm-hmm. And you can change the label within the grub menu too, instead of, so it doesn't interfere. It's just kind of, it's hard coded basically, but which I'm not happy about, but it works. So, you know.
Yeah, that would. Yeah, because this assumes that this is your
MMC.
Yeah.
And I think the HoneyCombe sees the thumb drive as SDA, so that's good. It usually finds it right away at that point. Whereas, like, if you boot from one of the internal drives in your system, it gets them all mixed up. I don't know why, but
Okay.
which is why I went with the labeling, because it made more sense in the end.
I'm just trying to think whether this is going to cause any issue. Not sure. Oops. Not.
I think I did make some changes to those scripts in that same directory. I don't remember how I did it. Let's see. Let me look at mine.
Okay. I'm not sure it's actually going to cause a problem. I think I'm just looking at the code, because basically if this script can't find the SLK boot partition on an MMC device, just does -. Yeah, it just does all this stuff if it finds it. It doesn't complain if it doesn't. So it should be fine actually.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because I hadn't had any problems with it. But
no, okay. Well coded.
And you can boot from a SD card or thumb drive or whatever you want. It's just you have to switch the there's a dip switch inside or on the motherboard that you just switch around depending on how you want to boot the machine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll have fun to look at that at some point over the next year when I get into that. But once you've done it, you can just give me. I'll build the stuff for it.
Yeah.
Okay. So
it's pretty close. It's just I've had some difficulties here besides computer stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So. Cool. Then once that's done, then once that part is done, I can look at how it works in the installer to make it so that it's automatic, because I don't want the user to have to do that manually. So we have to figure out how that works.
think it just has one menu, like a single screen where you could say, do you want to install Grub? And then it just installs and takes care of it all. But
okay.
I mean, I think I did do some work on that.
Hold on a sec. Back. Okay. Yeah, cool. We'll figure that out then. Once we've got the installer booted, it shouldn't be too difficult. But that'll be good, because that way then we'll have another referenceable method of using installing Slackware and managing it using Grub.
Yeah,
that'll be good. Okay. Did you say you got your Pine phone then? Has it arrived?
Yes, it came. It's working pretty well. I just don't have a SIM card in it yet, which is the real trick. But I updated the system, and it had like some package it needed for widgets. It was like the wrong version, so half the GUI apps didn't work. But I fixed that in Manjaro, and it all looks great. Everything else is working okay. They say it's a developer phone, but I think it if you just use it with Manjaro ARM, it's pretty good, I think. But not the YouTube videos like that they discuss about how maybe it's not ready for production for the average person is probably right, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not really sure what I would use it. I mean, I can't really, I mean, apart from the form factor, that was the only thing that I thought, oh, okay, yeah, the form factor, because it's got. Does it have an LCD built into it? Or
yeah, it has like, and they have the Gorilla Glass and all that stuff. it doesn't come with a cover, but it does come with a screen protector. But the whole reason I bought it was because I need a new phone anyway, and I was like, okay, whatever. And might as well try it out.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, that seems to have got stuck there. What was it?
I've got it hooked up to my laptop with KDE Connect, and that works great.
Okay, I haven't actually looked at the Pine phone at all. It's just I'm going to have a look at it in the browser in a moment. I really need to zoom around.
It's basically the same processor as the Rock Pro and the Pinebook, but it has some modifications to make it more power efficient. It's like a summary of it. I'm sure there's other things, but that was what I gathered from reading their blog posts and stuff.
Okay. Okay.
I was able to import all my contacts, my calendar, all sorts of stuff, music, all of it. So.
Why is this? Ah, that's why it's so slow. I'm running all this stuff and it's only got. Okay, that explains it. Right. Yeah, I need to give this machine more RAM definitely next time. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to order it when I did because after Christmas, I think they're going to be sold out again. If they aren't already.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I couldn't really see the purpose of running a Slackware on a phone like this, though. To me, it's just.
Yeah. It would probably boot and it would probably install, but it doesn't have all the mobile like touchscreen and all that stuff. Yeah.
Doesn't make any
and
sense.
Manjaro, they built KDE Mobile, and that's what I have on here, I think.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah. And so that's like a whole nother can of worms. I mean.
Yeah, I'm not interested in any of that. That's not what this project is about.
I know.
It's about servers and laptops and desktops. That's it. It's not. This to me, this stuff is like you need something. If it's going to be something that's interactive like this, everything needs to be finely tuned. Like you can't be having something that's slow and laggy. It's like no. I mean, I can understand the form factor if you wanted to play around with it. If you wanted to use it, to attach to something. I can't. But other than that, no.
Well, it does have a case you can buy that adds a keyboard, and then you can plug in a HDMI cable into the charging port and use it with the monitor.
Okay.
Yeah, they have some kind of docking station, but I didn't get that, seeing as the last docking station I got didn't work. So for the Rock Pro.
Oh right, yeah. There's did I tell you actually I bought both. In fact, I've changed the documentation on the Slackware install guides because of this, because the Pine 64 SATA PCI SATA card that I had two of them. I still have them actually. I've got the two of them, and both of them were working fine, but then one of them I started having disk errors, so I just replaced it with a Marvel card. Disk errors all gone. And then the other one kept going for a while, but fortunately I bought two of them in a Black Friday sale the previous year. And eventually that one had disk errors, so I replaced that with a Marvel card and the disk errors all went away. So I've made a note in the install guide that some of that type of that cheap hardware just doesn't really stand the test of time, or isn't really doesn't have the longevity that one might expect. Although
pretty much the stuff we have listed like on the Slackware wiki, that's what I use with my Rock Pro and my Pinebook.
Yeah.
I haven't really gone out to try different hard drives or anything because what I have works. So.
Yeah, same here. Actually, one of the things that I've got to take off there is off the installation guide for the Pinebook Pro is the 500 gig NVMe, because that one I always had problems with it in my Pinebook Pro. It would disappear off the bus, or it would have file system errors or whatever, and I replaced it with the 250 gig version and never had a problem with it. But the same NVMe, because I thought, oh, I can't be bothered to send it back, so I just kept it in. Those wasn't, you know when you're not in the mood to go and deal with anything like that, I just left it in the cupboard. And then I had to get a new x86 machine, and I put it in there. Works flawlessly. So
Yeah.
clearly, just an interoperability problem with the Pinebook Pro. So I need to take that off the documents. Actually, I've been meaning to do that for a while. Right, what I'm going to show you then is so this is the Raspberry Pi 4. We're back in the bootloader, and I'm going to show you the new first stage of the
Oh, nice.
pre-boot shell. And so this isn't public yet, although it will be with Linux 6.1. This stuff is this is the all of the testing I've been doing whilst we've been sitting on Linux 6.0. So hopefully I've pasted this in properly. So we're in the U-boot bootloader for the Raspberry Pi 4. Let's see. Oh, of course it doesn't work. Hang on a minute. What was it complaining about? Wrong image format. What? Might have broken something there. What have I done there? This is the live demo. I mean, it really is
missing an X, I think. Maybe.
Huh?
No, that's right.
No, I don't think so. I'm not sure why it's complaining about that.
Yeah.
Hate this thing. It does that. It's quite annoying. It's worked before. It might be because it hasn't copied the kernel into the right place or something like that. I'm not sure actually.
It didn't paste everything there.
It might not have done. No, I don't know.
It keeps only putting a little bit of what you pasted.
That's why. File not found. Why is that not there?
2 BCM 2711s in the name.
Oh yeah, thanks. Oh, God, that's zero.
Now you have to copy it again.
I know. Thank goodness this isn't something that I do on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On my Raspberry Pi 4, I just have a TFT boot all the time now. And
Oh right.
I decided to save all the commands into the distro boot command as a variable, and then I just let it boot by itself. I don't even have to.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I don't have to screw with it.
Oh right, that's a good idea. Yeah, I hadn't thought about doing that.
And I just backed up what was in there to a different variable, saved it.
Oh, there we go. I don't know what happened to it before. Oh, that's a good idea, Brent. I'll do that myself. I never thought of that.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to do. You just edit the variable. And
well, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make it so that this script here that it's loaded actually sets that variable. So the next time. Oh, does it? If I save the file, if you save env in here, does it actually save to the?
Yeah.
Where does it save it to in the flash? I can't remember.
It'll save it on the SD card, I believe.
It depends how I configured U-boot, because you have to tell it where to save its data. I don't know.
I think it does. It just drops it onto the thumb drive, or not the thumb drive, the SD card.
Okay, I'll have a look at it. Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that.
I forget what the file's called, but it works.
Yeah, because something called U-boot env or something like that, or unv or something, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is stage. So this is the new stage 1 of 3, the initial boot stage. So you can see there's no kernel modules. There's none been configured and there's none been loaded. So like if you do lsmod, there's nothing. There's very little in the environment. There's no kernel modules defined. And it tells you, so, you know, for example, if you wanted to edit this, so if you wanted to change the loader scripts to hack around on them, you'll find them there. So you should be, you know what, does it have nano? Where does it, how does it get nano in here? I was thinking, I thought I saw nano, because, you know, I usually either use Vi or nano, usually nano, and then I use Vi if nano is absent. And I thought, I'd looked in the kernel Slack build earlier, and I thought, how did it get nano in there? Because I haven't added nano in there, but I assume it is actually
Yeah, I think it just comes in the regular Slackware installer.
Well, maybe it does.
Yeah.
Uh,
Try
oh,
VI, see if that's there.
no, this is This is the installer. It's not in the OS init RD, I don't think.
Yeah.
For the OS. For the installer, yeah, I've added loads of stuff in the installer. That's probably why it's in there. Or like you say, it's just included in the regular installer anyway. Okay, so anyway, the point is you can use Nano if you like, or you can use Vi as well. So you can load these up. Oh, I know, yeah, Nano, it has some bad terminal settings here. Oh, actually, if I do term equals Linux, does it make that better? Oh yeah, it does. There we go. So I can actually use that. Well, I was using the page up and down, and it added the tilde in, so I needed to change the terminal setting. So basically, these scripts here that I've just loaded. This one's for the RK3399, which covers Pinebook Pro, Rock Pro 64, and the Radxa, how you pronounce it, the Rock Pi 4. Anyway, so the point is, it has it's a shell script, and you know, we're on this is a Raspberry Pi actually. Let's load up the Raspberry Pi one, because if I edit that one, it won't do anything because that's well, it depends where I put the code I was going to hack on actually, but let's not get into the details. It's a 2711, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Raspberry Pi script, and basically it sets a bunch of variables. Standard variable names that include a list of kernel modules, basically, so device drivers. So if we just add something in, I'm just going to make it say something. So there we go. And then if we exit that, there we go. So it's now we've left the shell, and the kernel module loader has loaded in all of the files it found, including the one we just edited. And there you can see my edit. So you can actually edit these files before they're considered by the boot process. So that makes it really easy if you want to just hack your system to get it working when you're onboarding new hardware models, or even if you just want to hack something just because it's broken or you want to play around with it. So this is the second stage. Yep, so this is the second stage. And at this point, the kernel modules have been configured to load, but they're still not loaded. So if you look at the module list now, you'll see there's a whole bunch of modules set so that you can't change. Well, you can actually. You still can hack it, but I'm not going to get into that because it's easier just to edit them in the first stage. That was the point of it.
Yeah.
But you can still hack them as well, actually, but you can't not from here because this is.
This one's basically just good to see if everything you have works and the script works. And
that's right, exactly. This is like the visibility stage, pretty much. And then you finally exit this shell, and you end up in the third stage, where now the kernel modules are all being loaded into the kernel as we speak. There you can see them all of the output from the kernel modules. I haven't booted this kernel before, by the way. So I think it's 6.0.14. I only built it yesterday, I think.
Oh, okay.
So I haven't booted this one yet. I'm still hacking on this. Well, not hacking on it, but I'm using the 6.0 series to still make, because somebody asked for the NF tables, which was which was missing. The firewall stuff was missing out of the kernel. So I added that in and rebuilt the kernel 6.0 kernel to make sure it's still built. So yeah, I haven't tested this one. I wonder whether the actually, let's just check. Okay, so this is stage 3 of the reboot shell, and you can see that the kernel modules are all loaded. Oops, so just exit that shell, and then we'll boot into the installer proper at this point. So the regular sort of Slackware installer stuff will take over. And there we go.
Yeah. I wonder if people are using this because I've used it a lot.
Probably not.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, it was added to for the purposes of development. I don't know if anyone but you and I use it at the moment. But the idea is, I mean, the idea of the project is that once we've got more of the documentation out there and people are used to it, they can start contributing, to help add it to other hardware models and that kind of stuff. But because really the purpose, this project is not about providing support for every single ARM hardware model out there. That makes no sense at all.
No.
Literally no sense at all.
Unless you have like a massive team
of
people to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very time consuming.
Yeah, and then you need backups of all the hardware, because how are you going to support it if you've only got one? Or is it you just tossing it out there and hoping that it is what it is? It's like, no.
Well, like what I've done with some Orange Pis is I buy 2 of them instead of just one, so that I can get one working and then try to reproduce it.
Oh right, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's what I did during the stages of the early stages of the 64-bit port as well. Yeah. Okay, so this is the Slackware installer is booted. I wonder if there's any of the. I wonder if it's. Oh, there we go. Look, true to form. It's erroring now. So I look forward to that not being the case with Linux 6.1.
Yeah, I see that they marked it as a 0.1 stable now.
Yeah. Well, oh, is there?
Yeah, 6.1.1.
Ah, it wasn't earlier when I looked today. Okay, cool. In that case, I'll have a look at that. Well, probably over the next. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. Oh yeah, okay. Maybe I'll even do it after the podcast, because I really only need to grab a few patches and change the kernel config and that kind of stuff, and leave it building. That's the good thing. Now I've got the all of those. I've updated the build system to enable out of tree building of kernels and installer images and all that stuff. I can really easily test all this stuff now without interfering with the main tree, which is the problem I always used to have. That is one of the benefits of the Raspberry Pi being in the current state it is I actually had to develop around it, so, rather than just assuming.
And I've actually made use of the option to merge a kernel config, with what we have, so that I don't have to go through it, and I can be super lazy and merge a config I know works.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, well, thanks for telling me about that. I'll sort that. I'll make a move on the Linux 6.1 stuff, but probably I won't do. Well, I don't know. Depends how long Christmas lasts, I guess. But probably won't release anything until after Christmas, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. Now, there is one important announcement. Probably I should have done this ahead of time, or rather at the start. But let's see. Ta-da! I decided to announce the end of life for Slackware ARM 14.2 because I did some calculations on, first of all, how much does this thing actually cost to run? How much does the builder machine cost to run? And over the course of a month, it's about maybe £8 or £9. So it's like $20 or something like that, a bit less. Yeah. And I thought, okay, well, that's quite a bit just for not doing that much, because I'm not going to, the machine needs to be running in order to get into it. But also the actual kernel itself has been out of support for months already. So to me, if the core of the system has no security updates, then kind of doesn't really make sense to continue supplying any more updates for it if the actual core of the OS is no longer maintained. And it's not as if I'm going to rebase the kernel for it to one that is supported. That's not happening. So given that it's now 7 years old or thereabouts, and we've got 15.0 released, it makes, I've announced there's an EOL for this, and it'll die in March next year. So that'll be time to say goodbye. And it's a good machine. That's the last remaining ARM v5 builder. Maybe I'll do like a demo, a video for it once I shut it down and show you the 300 odd days uptime it has. 300 days uptime it has. Probably have about 360 by the time we go to shut it down. It'd be sad. It'd be like, Sonny, look at all those days.
Well, the good news is the next stable release will have the ability to do its own kernel build separate from the rest of the tree. So you can just keep supporting it as long as you want.
Yes.
Build the test kernel and keep going if you want.
Well, you could. I mean, you could just upgrade the kernel yourself. I'm not going to do it, but you have to. Generally, you need to recompile a bunch of other stuff. Like you need to rebuild some of the IP. I think you do anyway. Yeah, I mean, I would out of caution rebuild anything like the IP tables packages, and there'll be some other, like, I don't know if glibc would need a rebuild, and it's not that straightforward. For just you as a user, it is. You just recompile the kernel, build a new one. It's usually fine. But for the distributor or for the vendor, you need to look at a few packages and rebuild them, which I'm not going to do for this whole. I mean, plus the builder is the building is all done natively for the stable releases. So this old machine is, I mean, it's old. This ARM v5 machine, so it's really slow. So this is Bladsweed. This is the 64-bit, but the actual 32-bit machine that 14.2 runs on for the stable builder is old and it's really slow. So it takes about, I think, 2 days to compile the kernel to build the kernel package.
I have a Raspberry Pi 1 from, I don't even know when that was made, but I just put Raspbian on it because it's a lot easier than to screw with it.
Yeah.
Great tool for the job type of thing.
Yeah.
Because I think they're going to keep supporting all their hardware, you know. But.
Oh, right. Well, yes, I guess that's one of the benefits of them doing their own distribution. They can do that, but
yeah, exactly.
You know, that's incredibly old hardware as well. I mean, it's a shame though. It's good. I actually intended to keep 14.2 up for much longer, but then because of the price of the electricity, I thought, really, what's the point in spending a tenner a month on just running this thing? It just doesn't make any sense. Like it's kind of like from a purely financial point of view, and I don't think anyone's really using it. I've never asked, but no one's ever said anything about it over the last few years. I mean, and certainly in the x86 world, I think most people stopped using Slackware 14.2 a long time ago because it was it was so old at that time, just before 15, in the months or the year before 15 was released, that people had jumped to current anyway because there's things like the web browser is no longer supported, so that's not secure. You shouldn't browse the web with an ancient web browser. It's like one of the worst things you can possibly do.
You can use Conqueror.
I work in a security company. I can tell you that's one of the worst things you can possibly do. A Conqueror, I think Conqueror tended to, particularly the version in 14.2, pretty much hung on most of the websites you took it to. So it was, or it crashed. So I think most people don't even use 14.2 anymore anyway. So I think
I have a Orange Pi that's running 14.2, but it's so slow I just cannot stand it. It's just I use it as like a repeater sometimes when I need to put a computer in another room, and I have a long Ethernet, but it's not long enough. So the Orange Pi has 2 ports in it, 2 Ethernet ports. So I just instead of buying another cable, I just do that.
You can actually get an RJ45 to RJ45 female box that has an input and out.
I know.
Oh, right. Okay.
I already own this, so I was like, okay.
That's the most expensive way of extending an Ethernet cable I've ever heard of. You're actually powering a device that doesn't need to be running. It's just simply join a cable together.
The board only has 256 megabytes of RAM.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I put a fan facing it while it's on because I don't trust it anymore.
Oh yeah, I had a Guru plug. In fact, actually, it wasn't mine. I still have the Guru plug though in my box of junk, of old ARM junk, and it's just one of the Marvel. Is it Marvel? Yeah, Marvel Guru plug. It's the guys that made the Shiva plug, which is what the 14.2 stable builder runs on. and it has a fan built into it because they took the old Shiva plug and then stuck more Ethernet ports and other bits and stuff in there. And then when people started actually running the machine, giving it some work to do, burning CPU and network, basically the machine just got too hot. And clearly the designers have never thought people are actually going to put heavy workloads on this stuff. So they then had to retrofit fans on top of it. And it's the most noisiest thing you can imagine. And one of my
itty bitty fans are the loudest.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, and I gave it to Jim Hawkins that used to work on the project years ago. He sort of helped bootstrap it. And I said, Jim, do you want your Guru plug back? And he's like, no. And this was years ago, even when he still could have used it. And he's like, no, I don't want that back. Thanks. How am I going to put that in my house?
Make like a graveyard or something for some of these little boards.
I've got what I'm going to do when I shut the ARM v5 builder down next year. I'll do a video and I'll lay out all the ARM stuff. Like, here's how we got here.
Yeah.
And I still got one of the original ARM built, the RISC PC. That I've got one of the two original build machines at home still, so I can like do the generation. Here's like the granddaddy. Gave birth to all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Speaking of crazy stuff, Brent, I'm going to end on this. We'll see if anyone makes it this far, but this is quite funny. I got an email a few weeks ago, I think. Somebody who'd helped out, and it doesn't matter who it was. I'm not going to say because I think it's quite funny. I'm not sure they do, but I think it's really funny. So sorry if you listen to this. And I'm laughing at your misfortune, but it was quite funny to read. And he said, I said to him, "Oh, how's your how are you doing with the Rock Pro 64? Is everything still working?" He said, "Oh, well, because I've just bought my third one because the first one it fell off a wall and broke.
Oh no.
The second one, a forklift truck backed into a wall and the wall fell on the Rock Pro 64." What? What are you talking about?
You're not making this up.
No, I'm not making this. I read it and I just burst out laughing. I almost spat my coffee all over the screen and the keyboard. What are you talking about? How did that happen?
Should have bought the case. The NAS case would have been safe.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. Like, that would have been a good video. Like, you could have sent me photos. Here's what's happened to my Rock Pro 64. Just imagine this forklift truck driving into a wall and then it crushing the Rock Pro 64 behind it. Thankfully, I guess no one else was actually sitting there or anything.
If you have any like burnt out Rock 64s, you should just get the case and make a whole video on like it falling off walls and stuff.
Well, actually, I've still got the. I did a video on it. The one that was called Muttley at the time. I've since reused that name because I'm not very creative when it comes to names. I just reuse the same ones. And so it still boots and everything. It'll boot the installer, but then when you start to install the packages, it just goes crazy. And I think the RAM is damaged. So, but it's still you can still boot it. So I've kept it, and then I use it for example, I use ATX power supplies off old x86s to power the two Rock Pro 64 building machines. And one of the fans had died it was when the brushes go bad and they just start making loads of noise.
Yeah.
Like really loud noise. So I dismantled the ATX power supply after leaving it, alone for several minutes to let the capacitors drain. And I dismantled it and then I switched out the fan with another fan from another x86 because people have given me various ones. They just donated these old x86 power supplies, but I couldn't get all of them to work. I think some of them were either broken or that they had to be in a certain case and it had to draw a certain amount of power in order to power it on or something like that. I looked into it and I couldn't get it working. So I got two of them working, the rest of them didn't. So I pulled out I switched the fan over. And then I thought to myself, I should probably measure the polarity. I should figure out the polarity because I chopped off the connector off some old PSU I didn't need anymore for some, like some old webcam or something I had in the loft. So I thought, let's just chop that off. You see if it fits in the hole. Let's chop the end off, solder it together. I thought I should probably check the polarity, and I thought, it doesn't matter. The easiest way is plug it into the old Rock Pro 64. It's broken anyway, so if it explodes or it just breaks, I don't really care.
Yeah.
So I just plugged it in, it lit up, went, it must be that way. Soldered it together, plugged it in, Bob's your uncle. It's probably not the right way to do things, I have to admit, but it was,
You mean like the extender orange pie? Not the right way to do things.
Yeah. Well, it's just I thought I was right. I thought I'd got that. It wasn't a 50-50 chance. I was just pretty certain that on the cable, on these on the two what do you call them? 2-core cable, that often they have a long white strip or some coloured strip on them, which means it's the plus, the positive. So I'm pretty certain that was the case, and it is. So I just went, that looks like positive and positive. Let's just wire it together.
Yeah.
Right, we've hit the hour, so I think we'll call it a day here. We haven't got anything else to talk about, I don't think. So I will have a look at Linux 6.1.1 soon, and in fact I might do it after this podcast, and then set that bad boy building, and we'll look. I'll look at the HoneyCombe stuff next year. I'll see if I can get one of those boards. Once you've had a look at it as well, we've got the sort of started to see how to merge in some of the code to build the installer images and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And
so you think it's good to go with the UEFI firmware then?
Yeah. There's no, as I said, it's because it's good because it's bad because it's more work to do to actually merge this in than to just use the U-boot thing. Plus, also, how does the question? I've got a couple of questions on that. How do we? Actually, I think you've shown me this before. But how, like in the way when you boot with the U-boot stuff, you boot the car, you boot it, and it tells you boot Slackware installer, and that's the only option in the menu. And then when you're done, it removes the option completely, and you're left with booting EOS. So I'm interested in how we're going to do that. But I think you've shown me at the moment, you've literally just got 2 items in the menu and you pick one or the other. So I think that's what you did, right? So look
and add, different options and grow up to besides what I have. So
okay. So I'll have to see how we can manage that, because I want to kind of keep the same remove. Do you want to, option to remove the installer, and how does that work with the config and stuff like that? But those are little details to be worked on later.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, guys. Well, have a good Christmas.
Yes, tomorrow's my birthday.
It is, yes, and happy birthday for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And what are you doing?
I think we're staying home, but we're gonna probably have some recordings of the World Cup and stuff like that. Gonna watch that. Yeah.
Well, we'll have a good time, Brent. And thanks for your help on the project over the last couple of years.
Yes, no problem. I'll talk to you.
See you later, guys.
All right, bye.
Cheers. Take care. Right, stop that. Recording.